Ron? Where are you? Where is Ron right now?
Hi, everyone. Caught me off guard because the new intro is shorter than the previous intro. Ron is here. Welcome back for more SPTV, where every day is a great day not to be in a cult. It's hard to be my normal, bright, chipper, laughy self today. I'm still so disturbed by what happened to the protesters outside of La Poubelle last night. In about an hour, William Good and I, Streets LA, will be doing an interview. And in the meantime, I wanted to react to this Vice video that I've probably gotten about 200 emails and messages about, just not to leave you guys hanging. Last night, William Good, Streets LA, had his nose broken outside the La Poubelle restaurant by someone who came out of the restaurant to interact with the protesters, and then after the assault, went back into the restaurant. And then the police showed up, and William Good says, yeah, I was assaulted, and, like 6 officers showed up. And the head officer goes, oh, no. And was unbelievably unprofessional and inappropriate and confrontational with the protesters. And then the attacker was caught on camera going into the restaurant, the security guard in front, specifically letting them back into the restaurant. And I texted Streets, and I texted Confident Chris, and I said, there is no other exit to that restaurant. There is no back exit. There is only one entrance to that building. It is the front. If that guy's in there, he's in there until he comes out. All the police go into the restaurant, or, a bunch of them do. And while one of the other officers is taking William's statement, and the police come out and go, yeah, no, he's not in there anymore. He left. And Will goes, of course he did. Of course he did. And I'm texting him. I'm like, the police are lying. He is in there. There is no exit from that restaurant. I promise you. And Confident Chris and Tao stayed in front of the restaurant. And once the police had left and gone to the parking lot behind the restaurant, the attacker was also caught on film after a silver Mercedes pulled up right out front. The attacker poked his head out, ran to the car, jumped in, car sped right off. So the guy who attacked Will was not a Scientologist. But at this point, what's most shocking about these protests is the LAPD. Okay, so that's what Will and I are going to... And by the way, when I say Will's nose was broken, Will's nose was very broken. It was disturbing. Okay, so Will and I are going to be talking about that in about an hour. This is going to be a reaction to the Vice video. Guys, I got a lot of thoughts about this video. This is one of the strangest things I've ever seen. I guess I'm going to give props to Vice for doing a Scientology video at all. Huge channel, 18 million subscribers. Any exposure is good exposure. Guys, I am terribly confused about why they chose to hide every square inch of this person's skin, so we have no idea what their skin color is. They did a voice modulator. They put a mask over this person, and it's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. Is this just a gimmick that Vice does? Like, here's the thing. I'm going to sprinkle this with a bit of criticism and a bit of praise. Praise for doing Scientology content. If you do it weirdly, you're still doing it. You're still getting the word out. You're still reaching lots of people. What is the point of making it seem like this guy is taking his life into his own hands by telling a relatively normal experience of having worked at a Scientology organization in the UK? I'm a little confused. Do they not know that there was a TV show on for 3 seasons where former Scientologists and Sea Org members told their whole horrible life stories on network or cable television? Or that there's not 30, 40, 50, 60, 75 former Scientologists on YouTube? There's no need to do this identity protection. It's got to be a gimmick. But that being said, the guy is very clearly legit. And that's kind of why I wanted to react to this. I wanted to point out the parts of his story that, like, you couldn't make this stuff up. You couldn't watch a bunch of videos on YouTube and come up with your own story like this. So let's take a look at this. Let's have a little bit of fun. This is only a 7-minute video. So let's and I'm starting about a minute into it. So let's do this.
They actually use the free personality test as how to recruit people. That's the number one way of doing it.
Oh,
To show where you're happy in life.
sorry, guys.
I think we're going to recruit people. That's the number one way of doing it.
Sorry, guys.
They actually use the free personality test as how to recruit people. That's the number one way of doing it. It produces like a graph to show where you're happy in life and where you're not happy in life. And they're looking for where you're not happy in life or what it is about yourself that you'd like to improve, and that they call your doing. And then once they find out what your doing is, they will use that against you because they will make you believe that only Scientology can help you handle that problem.
So, that particular aspect of it is, he says, the personality test. They call it the OCA, the Oxford Capacity Analysis Test. It's the most basic standard recruit tool in Scientology. And when we use the word recruit here, what we're talking about is sales. The personality test is how they sell you Scientology courses and auditing. In Scientology, when we say recruit, that actually means convincing somebody to join staff and work for Scientology. But the OCA graph is used to sell you Scientology, and that is just 100% accurate. So let's see where else he goes.
Within a few months of first going there, I started to work there, and they spent some time trying to recruit me to join them. I wasn't initially planning to do that. They basically wore me down. They put me through what they call a recruitment interview. They put me there for hours, and if I refused to sign the paper, they say, okay, well, what I'd like to do is have a read of this, and they give me some materials to read. And they'd have me start reading that, and then they'd go away, and they'd come back an hour later, and they'd start again. That's pretty much how they do everything, how they get you to pay over money. They just won't stop asking you.
I really liked, I'm sorry, I promise I won't stop this all the time, but it's kind of why I'm doing the video, is to react to it. You'll notice now he's using the word recruit in the way a Scientologist would use the word recruit, which is to get you to join staff and work for them. And his very casual, plain description of that process is just so accurate and spot on. By this point in the interview, I just had no question that the guy was legit. It gets even more obvious to a former Scientologist that he's legit later on in the interview. Now, to people who I guess don't have experience with high control groups or whatever, the main question that might come up is, okay, so they're trying to get you to do something you don't want to do. And they come and they have you read this thing that you don't really want to read, but you're reading it because they told you to. And then they leave you alone for a while and you read the thing. And then they come back and they start harassing you to do the thing you don't really want to do anyway. And then when you don't agree, they're like, well, since you haven't agreed yet, I have something else for you to read. Go ahead and read this. Now you might go, but why are you even agreeing to stay there and read that stuff if you don't really want to do the thing they're trying to get you to do? And the only reason you're reading this thing is to put you in a frame of mind where you'll be more amenable to do the thing they're trying to get you to do that you don't want to do. It's really hard to understand why someone would put up with all this crap unless you've traveled that path. It's hard to explain, but when he says that's how they do everything, they just don't stop asking you. It's kind of a very, very simple and very, very true explanation of how it works. All right, let's keep going.
Once I had agreed to do it, I had to sign a 2.5-year contract. They had told me I'd be earning probably £200 a week, which turned out to not be true. I found myself working over 80 hours a week and earning under £5,000 a year. I was basically teaching people courses. I started at 9 o'clock in the morning and finished at 10 o'clock tonight, Monday to Friday. And at the weekends, I worked from 9 o'clock till 6 o'clock.
Okay, I'm just going to jump in here just for the benefit of former Scientologists and former staff members. So here's what struck me. There are two kind of contracts in a Scientology organization, a normal Scientology organization, a 2.5-year contract and a 5-year contract. A 2.5-year contract is if you're going to be an administrative staff member. And I guess for some reason, if you're just going to be an administrative staff member, you could also sign a 5-year contract, but there's literally no reason to. A 5-year contract is when you're going into full-time training to train for a technical post. I guess in some cases it's for a higher level administrative post, but you sign a 5-year contract when you're going into full-time training to hold a technical post. And the only thing that struck me in this interview here, and it could have been a function of editing, is that he said he signed a 2.5-year contract, but then he says he supervised the courses. Well, in order to supervise the courses, my experience is you have to go into full-time training to become a course supervisor, which means when you finish your training, you're on a 5-year contract. Now, I'm only calling that out, not because I think his story is inaccurate, but I think it was a function of the editing. And due to the editing, a former Scientologist might look at this and go, that's an inconsistency. But I think it's an inconsistency due to the editing. The schedule that he gave for the organization, that's 100% accurate for every Scientology organization. Monday through Fridays, 9 to 10, Saturday, Sunday, 9 to 6. All right, let's keep going.
I must have had about 10 days off in the whole time I worked there. They have you sign a contract, which puts you down as a volunteer, so they don't have to pay you the minimum wage. How they pay you is a proportion of what the organisation pulled in that week. It could be £80 one week, it could be £20 another week. You've got no control of it.
Okay, good. I'm going to jump in right there. I was disappointed that they didn't say how long he worked for the organization. You could be like, well, maybe they didn't want to do that because it would help Scientology, bracket in on who it is they're talking to. I would then go back and be like, Scientology doesn't give a shit who they're talking to. He's not going to say hardly anything controversial, and that's not a criticism of him. It's a comparison to all of the stories of former Scientologists that have been being told for 20 or 30 years. There's nothing uniquely remarkable about this interview, this whole thing of trying to protect the guy's identity. I felt like telling us how long he worked for the organization would have gone a long way to get us to understand more of his story or his experience. And I think you're going to see a little bit more of what I mean in a moment here.
They tend to cut you off from everybody, and first of all, by taking up all your time, they have you in there every free moment you've got. So you haven't really got as much time for friends and family, and you end up kind of cutting them off automatically.
I thought that was an amazing comment. To be honest, what he just said had never quite occurred to me. People who watch a lot of Scientology-related content are familiar with the idea of Scientology enforcing disconnection of its members from people Scientology considers undesirable. There's another aspect of disconnection. They keep you so freaking busy all the time that you just organically lose contact with everyone in your life who isn't also working for Scientology all the time. It's another aspect of disconnection, so almost an unintentional, well, one might argue it is intentional, form of disconnection that, to be honest, until I watched this video, hadn't quite occurred to me.
Also encourage you not to read newspapers or listen to the news. They tell you it's full of lies. I thought I was learning something. But since I've come out, I do realise that, yes, I was brainwashed by them. They got you speaking in their terms and their own language, and so you start to see the world completely differently. At one point, they decided to send me to a place called Flag in Florida in America, and they send you there to become trained. They consider that place to be the mecca of Scientology. They paid for me to go over there. And then once I got there, they took my actual passport off me, and they kept that, so I couldn't leave if I wanted to.
Pause it right there. This blew my mind, and it made me wonder how long this guy's been out of Scientology. It also made me question that 2.5-year contract thing that he said, because if you are a staff member of an organization in another country and you get sent to Flag in Clearwater, Florida for training, which Clearwater, Florida is where I live 5 minutes from Flag, you have to sign a 5-year contract. And yet he said he signed a 2.5-year contract. And that's why I go, I think it's editing. He also said that when he got to Flag, they took his passport. That was incredible to me because historically speaking, Flag took everyone's passports. In fact, all Sea Org members, Clearwater, no matter what Sea Org base you were on, if you were there from another country and you had a passport, you had to turn in your passport. That is an aspect of trafficking. And by many, many reports, a number of years ago, all passports were returned to Sea Org members without any explanation for why they were being returned. I forgot that outer org trainees at Flag who are not Sea Org members would also be in a position of having to turn in their passports. And it had never occurred to me to check whether outer org trainees' passports were still being taken. Now, this guy says he had to turn in his passport. So my first question was, holy shit, are they still taking outer org trainees' passports? Or is it possible that he was on staff in the UK and sent to Flag so many years ago that it was when they were still keeping passports? Either way, I thought it was amazing that he said it And I thought it was amazing that Vice included it in there because it is an element of human trafficking. And as far as I'm concerned, leave it up to the federal authorities to find out when exactly Scientology stopped confiscating the passports of all of its religious volunteers. So anyway, I was a big fan of that. All right, let's see what's next.
And I was doing courses over there in America. It was an even harder schedule than it was in England. It was even longer. You had to repeat certain principles over and over. They call it Chinese school. You literally knew everything word for word. They were supposed to pay so much every week for your room and board there. If they failed to pay, then you would work to make up that amount. So you'd spend so much time every week, probably about 25, 30 hours, doing some physical job usually. You'd have to do that and then spend the rest of the time on course as well. I was quite lucky if I got 6 hours sleep. That was a good night. Part of the work they made me do was to work on these buildings that they were changing from one thing to another. They were updating them. For part of the day, they would have these kids come on there. They're called the EPFers, and they would.
Okay, I'm going to pause it right there. This guy's so legit. He's so legit. The 3 or 4 years that I was training at Flag as an out-org trainee, as a staff member from the Philadelphia org, I was on the work study program that this guy is describing. What makes that particularly interesting in my case is I was 13, 14, and 15 years old. And I was doing manual labor. I was doing construction work. I was doing demolition. I was doing HVAC work. I was doing work in the restaurants. I was doing work in the hotels. And it literally was like 30 to 35. I'd have to sit down and count it all out. Hours of manual labor, physical labor, hard labor, just to work off the 3 meals a day that they provided you. And the room, the studio motel room that you shared with 5 other people and 1 bathroom, that warranted doing 35 hours of labor a week just to pay for that. Something tells me 35 hours of work in the real world would pay for a hell of a lot more than a hostel and 3 meals a day. But what do I know, guys? I grew up in a cult. All right, let's see what he has to say.
They would come and work.
I'll rewind this a touch.
Part of the day, they would have these kids' buildings that they were changing from one thing to another. They were updating them. For part of the day, they would have these kids come on there. They're called the EPFers, and they would come and work on the site, and they didn't have any safety, any gloves, nothing, and they were just running around the site working. At the time, I was a little bit surprised at that. So all the kids here, some of the kids are probably 13, 14 years old. The field is the kind of elite part of Scientology. They will work probably close to 100 hours a week for most of them, and they get paid about £50 a week. Some of them seem like very nice people, and some of them seem like very ruthless, nasty people.
Okay, I'm going to pause it right there. This is another part of the video that made me go, God damn, Vice is not doing anybody any favors by not saying when this occurred. I don't know who this guy is. No one has contacted me and told me if they know who this guy is. By the way, if you're the guy in this Vice video, and you want to get in touch with me, even if you want to talk to me privately, secretly, if you want to stay anonymous, please do. growingupinScientology@gmail.com. I tend to believe that they've got you masked up like this because that's what Vice wanted, not because that's what you wanted. But I also feel like if you were someone who has already publicly spoken out, that the community would know who you are and everyone would already be whispering about who you were. So all I'm trying to say is I would love to know more about your story, because it has been largely reported that the Sea organization is no longer recruiting minor children, that you have to be at least 16 years old, and that you have to have graduated high school or have a GED. And of course, you know, when you join the Sea Org, if you're not legally emancipated, you get assigned a guardian or whatever. But that somehow this high school GED requirement satisfies the legal liability of having a religious volunteer, quote unquote, who's like 16 or 17 years old. It's also been widely reported that there are no more cadet organizations on any Sea Org bases around the world. And yet, as we all know in Scientology, these reforms tend to be a pendulum that there'll be a reform and then everyone will break the rules. And then they'll be like, we kind of have to reform again. And then they'll reform and then they'll break the rules, because the reforming is only being done because they have to, not because they want to. if this guy was at Flag in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and there were 13, 14-year-olds on the EPF, that would be a huge deal. And I would do videos about it every day. And yet I don't know, because they haven't told us how long ago this guy was there. All right.
OT stands for operating Satan, and it's supposed to be a person that's really in control of their life. They're supposed to be able to control things with their thoughts, with their intention. One of the things that they teach you in Scientology is that if you have any hypocritical thoughts, you're thinking bad things about Scientology, it's probably because you've done something bad yourself. That tends to make you not think anything bad about Scientology. You kind of control yourself and not go there mentally. But they've also got this culture where if you see anybody else doing anything that's not optimum, you need to write a report on them. And you haven't written the report, you can get in trouble yourself for that as well. It's just kind of looking at everybody and snitching on everybody. After being there for some years, I realised they weren't helping anybody, they were just making money. I didn't think it was right, and I kept it to myself, I didn't say anything. But before you can leave there, they have you do what they call a security check, where they ask you questions to make sure you haven't done anything that you shouldn't have done. You have to see various people, each one tries to talk you out of leaving. Then they put you on the e-meter, that machine that they use, and they do a crime session on you because they believe that the reason that you want to leave is because you've been doing bad things.
Okay, good. I've got to pause it there. Again, Vice themselves, whoever produced the segment, whoever edited the segment, may not understand enough about Scientology themselves to understand what details should not be edited out. And that's totally understandable. It's hard to expect anybody to understand this stuff at a deep level. The part of this story that I go, wait, what do I want to know? What do I want to know? Was he leaving staff because his contract was up and they were still putting him through all this trouble? Or was he leaving staff because again, he said it was only a 2.5-year contract, but we know it wasn't. It had to be a 5-year contract. And so anyway, for me, that would add depth to this story. Did you say, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. It's a money-making scheme and I've got to leave? Because then that adds another complexity to his story. Was he so intent on leaving that he was breaking his contract, but he was still enough of a believer that he subjected himself to their policies and procedures of requiring a sec check before leaving staff? Do you see? Anyway, I want to have so much more empathy for what this guy went through, but there's so much of his story that has been omitted. All right, let's see.
And if they really can't stop you, then they make you sign some things to say you'll never talk about it, some like non-disclosure type forms, which they don't give you a copy of. Then you're allowed to leave. Then I was under stress all the time. And then I was out, I felt free all of a sudden. I felt like, oh, I can earn money, I can do things, I can buy things, I can go places, I can go on holiday. I kind of get my life back, you know. And it wasn't until about 6, 7 years later when I started looking on the internet about Scientology that I really got it, what happened to me. I did realise that the whole thing was a complete scam. I was definitely a different person when I came out of Scientology, because I'd picked up a load of conspiracy theories. I was completely off the rails. I hadn't been to see the doctor for years about anything because I didn't believe that doctors knew anything. I refused to drink water from a tap because it's got chlorine in it and fluoride in it, which I believe are poisons. From what I've learned from cult experts, normally a person that joins a cult is in a vulnerable position, and it could happen to anybody. In my theory, I think if you're more susceptible to hypnosis, you're more likely to get into a cult.
Now you can see from the recommended videos here at the top that Vice does have a bit of an ongoing series of having people speak out about controversial things and doing it behind a mask. Unfortunately, I do feel that Vice has made themselves look a little silly by doing that on the subject of Scientology when hundreds and hundreds of people have told some of the most horrifying stories with no need to protect their identity. But again, that's just the criticism. Good for Vice for doing anything on Scientology at all. Good for this guy for speaking out. I sure would love to know who this guy is. So if you're out there, Mr. UK guy, please get in touch. If you want to do an interview, I'd be happy to do an interview as well. Growing up in Scientology @gmail.com. All right, let's see. Oh my goodness, who's handing out all the new memberships? The Scrapbooker, welcome. Tess Mack, welcome. Casey, welcome. Janet from Another Planet, welcome. Kathy O'Toole, welcome. Tintin, welcome. Ministry of Common Sense, welcome. Fantastic. That is so cool, you guys. Let's see here. Danny Resch, Scientology continues to send me mail. I will continue to donate $1 for each in David Miscavige's name. I informed them I do this for any received solicitations from them. That is amazing. Wow. Yeah, you might try calling up your local organization. I mean, it depends on if it's just a funny reason to keep doing super chats or if you're really, really trying to get off the mailing list. You might want to call up the local organization and say, hey, have you guys ever heard of SPTV on YouTube? Yeah, it's all these former Scientologists who are talking about all the abuses and everything. And they talk about David Miscavige and they talk about the OT levels and they talk about L. Ron Hubbard. And I got to tell you, every time you guys send me mail, I'm going to donate to the SPTV channels. So you guys are literally funding the SPs on this planet who are working for Sykes and Big Pharma. So if you guys want to keep funding the big SPs, keep sending me mail by all means. But I'm going to call you up every week and remind you that that's what you're doing. You might be able to figure out a way to troll them with it. And if you're in an area where it's legal to record those phone calls, that would be really funny. If you can record them and you do record them, send them to me and I'll do a video about it. Thank you, Danny. Escaping Falcon's Maze says if he still lives in the UK, he could be opening himself up to being sued in a way that would not apply in US law. Yes, I am aware that the UK laws on libel and slander are much more favorable, much more in favor of the complainant. It's just that there's already such an established history in the UK of people speaking out about Scientology, even on major programs and books and platforms, that I just, it's hard for me to believe that that would really be a risk, even though I do get your point that there's simply an increased risk in the UK. So thank you for that comment. Reverse YouTube. While on a routine inspection, USCIS came to talk to a couple people at ASHO, asked for their passports, and they said, HCO keeps it. HCO, guys, is the Hubbard Communications Office. That's what they call Division 1 in a Scientology organization, which is essentially HR. And yes, Division 1 is who keeps the passports. Everyone was called in the middle of the day and had their passports returned to them. Well, that must have been unique to what happened at ASHO. I wonder if a similar thing happened in other organizations. I've spoken to some Sea Org members who said they just randomly had their passport sent back to them through the comm center without any explanation. I imagine that once that happened at ASHO, word went out, even at other bases, and was like, get the passports back to the people. But yeah, that's incredible. Thank you for that info. I'm dying to know what year that is. Reverse YouTube, can you shoot me an email, growingup@Scientology@gmail.com? Let me know what year that was. I'd super appreciate that. All right, guys, stay tuned. Will Good and I, Streets LA, Scientology Audit, are going to do an interview here pretty shortly. So hit that notification bell, hit that subscribe button, guys. Thank you for hanging out with me, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have